The morning sun rose over New Harmony Colony like any other day. Captain Jake Morrison stood on the observation deck of the command center, watching the miners head out to the crystal fields. 50,000 people called this place home now. Children played in the parks while their parents worked the mines that had made this colony so valuable to Earth. Jake sipped his coffee and smiled. His wife, Lisa, was already at the medical center, preparing for another busy day. She had been complaining about the lack of proper equipment again, but Jake knew she loved her work here. They both did. This place had given them a life together, far from the crowded cities of Earth. The communication panel behind him buzzed softly. Maya Johnson, their communications officer, looked up from her station with a confused expression on her face. "Captain, I'm getting some strange readings on the long-range sensors," she said, her voice uncertain. Jake turned around and walked over to her station. The screen showed several large objects moving toward their system. They were still far away, but they were definitely heading straight for New Harmony. "How big are they?" Jake asked. Maya checked her readings again. "Very big, sir. Much bigger than any of our ships. And there are a lot of them." Jake felt his stomach tighten. In all his years as colony commander, they had never seen anything like this. Earth ships were the only ones that came to New Harmony, and these readings looked nothing like Earth technology. "Get Commander Stone up here right away," Jake ordered, "and send a message to Earth. Tell them we have unknown vessels approaching our system." Rick Stone arrived within minutes. He was a big man with gray hair and serious eyes. He had been Jake's friend since their academy days, and Jake trusted him completely. "What do we have, Jake?" Rick asked, looking at the sensor readings. "I don't know," Jake replied honestly, "but whatever they are, they're not from Earth, and they're heading straight for us." Rick studied the screen carefully. "These energy signatures are unlike anything in our databases. We need to prepare the defense systems." Jake nodded, but they both knew the truth. New Harmony had only basic defenses. They were a mining colony, not a military base. Their few patrol ships were meant to deal with pirates, not whatever was coming toward them. Hours passed slowly. The unknown ships continued their approach, and Jake found himself pacing the command center. Lisa had come up from the medical center to be with him, and her presence helped calm his nerves. "Maybe they're just passing through," she suggested, but Jake could hear the doubt in her voice. Lieutenant Ben Carter was monitoring the defensive positions when he suddenly straightened up. "Captain, the objects are dropping out of hyperspace at the edge of our system." The main screen lit up with the most terrifying sight Jake had ever seen. Massive crystalline ships, each one bigger than New Harmony's entire space dock, hung in space like deadly jewels. Their surfaces seemed to pulse with an inner light, and strange energy patterns danced across their hulls. "My God," Lisa whispered beside him. Jake tried to count them but gave up after reaching 20. There had to be at least 50 of the alien vessels, arranged in a perfect formation that spoke of military discipline and overwhelming power. "Are they trying to communicate?" Jake asked Maya. "Yes, sir. Incoming transmission," she replied, her hands shaking as she worked the controls. The main screen flickered, and Jake found himself face to face with something that made his blood run cold. The alien was tall and thin, its body seeming to be made of both metal and flesh. Energy crackled around its form, and its eyes glowed with an inner fire. When it spoke, its voice was like the sound of breaking glass. "I am Admiral Crixtall of the Zephyrian Empire," the creature said. "You have illegally occupied Zephyrian space. You will evacuate this system immediately and return to your home world." Jake stepped forward, trying to keep his voice steady. "I am Captain Jake Morrison, commander of New Harmony Colony. We have been here for over 30 years. This system was uninhabited when we arrived. We have legal claim to this world under Earth colonial law." The alien's glowing eyes seemed to focus on him with burning intensity. "Your laws mean nothing to the Zephyrian Empire. This system belongs to us by right of ancient claim. You have one of your hours to evacuate all personnel. Any ships remaining after that time will be destroyed." The communication ended abruptly, leaving the command center in stunned silence. 1 hour, Rick said, his voice tight with anger. They expect us to evacuate 50,000 people in 1 hour. Jake was already moving to the emergency stations. Begin immediate evacuation procedures. Get the civilian transports loaded with as many people as possible. Priority to families with children. The next hour was chaos. Alarms blared throughout the colony as people rushed to the landing pads. Jake watched from the command center as transport after transport lifted off, packed with desperate civilians. Lisa was organizing the medical evacuation, making sure the hospital patients were moved first. But Jake knew it was impossible. They had maybe 24 civilian transports, and each one could only carry a few hundred people. Even working perfectly, they could not evacuate everyone in time. 15 minutes left, Maya reported, her voice breaking. Jake made his decision. All remaining military personnel will stay behind to help with the final evacuations. Keep loading those transports until the last possible second. Rick grabbed his arm. Jake, you need to go. Get on one of those ships. No, Jake replied firmly. My place is here with my people. Lisa appeared at his side, having just returned from the landing pads. The last medical transport is ready to go. Most of the patients are on board. Jake looked at his wife, memorizing her face. Get on that transport, Lisa, please. She shook her head. I'm staying with you. Before Jake could argue, Ben Carter shouted from his station. Captain, they're powering up weapons. Through the viewports, they could see the alien ships beginning to glow brighter. Energy was building along their crystalline hulls like lightning trapped in ice. The transports are still launching, Maya cried. They're going after the civilian ships. Jake watched in horror as beams of pure energy lanced out from the alien fleet. The first transport to be hit simply vanished in a ball of white fire. Then another and another. Lisa's medical transport carrying wounded colonists and children exploded in a brilliant flash that lit up the entire colony. Lisa! Jake screamed, but it was too late. The massacre continued for several more minutes. Of the dozens of transports that had launched, only 3 managed to escape into hyperspace. Everything else was destroyed without mercy or hesitation. Jake stood frozen, watching the debris of his life's work and the people he had sworn to protect drift through space. Lisa was gone. Most of his colonists were gone. And the aliens weren't done yet. The Zephyrian ships moved closer to the colony itself, their weapons beginning to target the buildings below. With shaking hands, Jake activated the emergency beacon that would send a final message to Earth. He looked directly into the camera, knowing these might be his last words. This is Captain Jake Morrison of New Harmony Colony. We are under attack by an alien force calling itself the Zephyrian Empire. They came without warning. They demanded we evacuate in 1 hour. Then they opened fire on our civilian transports. They showed no mercy to women and children. His voice grew harder. Tell Earth what happened here. Tell them what these creatures did to innocent people. And tell them that humans don't forget. The transmission ended just as the first energy beam struck the colony buildings. Jake closed his eyes and thought of Lisa, hoping that somehow, somewhere, Earth would make the aliens pay for what they had done this day. The emergency session began at midnight. President Amanda Hayes sat at the head of the table in the deepest bunker beneath Washington. Around her, the leaders of every nation on Earth waited in silence. The holographic display in the center of the room showed the wreckage of New Harmony Colony. The survivors reached Luna Base 6 hours ago, General Marcus Webb reported. His voice was cold and steady, but his eyes burned with anger. 3 transports out of 47. Less than 800 people survived out of 50,000. Amanda looked at the faces around the table. Chinese Premier Liu, European Chancellor Muller, Russian President Volkov, African Union Chairman Okafor. For the first time in decades, she saw no disagreement between them. No politics, no arguments about trade or territory, only shared rage. Show them the recording, Amanda said quietly. The hologram changed to show Captain Morrison's final transmission. Every leader in the room had seen it before, but they watched again in complete silence. When it ended, the room remained quiet for a long moment. They killed children, Chancellor Muller said finally. They targeted the medical transports first. Premier Liu nodded slowly. My intelligence services have confirmed the energy signatures. These weapons are designed to cause maximum suffering. They wanted our people to die slowly. Amanda stood up and walked to the display showing Earth's orbital defenses. To most people, they looked like simple space stations and communication satellites. But she knew the truth that only this room was allowed to know. General Webb, activate Protocol 7, she ordered. Webb's eyes widened slightly. Madam President, Protocol 7 hasn't been used since the Resource Wars. Are you certain? They attacked our civilians without warning. They murdered our children. Yes, I'm certain. Webb pressed his thumb to a scanner on the table. Across the solar system, hidden installations began to wake up. On the dark side of the moon, massive, doors opened in what looked like empty craters. In the asteroid belt, mining stations transformed as weapon systems emerged from concealed compartments. Even on Mars, beneath the research domes, military complexes that officially didn't exist came online. How long do we have? Amanda asked. Our deep space monitors show Zephyrian ships massing at the edge of their territory, Webb replied. If they move against Earth directly, we estimate 2 weeks before they reach our outer systems. Dr. Alan Ross, the Director of Advanced Weapons Research, cleared his throat nervously. Madam President, if I may suggest activating Project Ragnarok as well? The room fell silent again. Even these leaders who knew Earth's deepest military secrets had only heard whispers about Ragnarok. Explain it to them, Doctor, Amanda said. Ross activated his personal display. Project Ragnarok consists of weapon systems that violate 43 different galactic treaties. Of course, humanity never signed those treaties because we weren't invited to. The project includes quantum disruptors that can tear apart matter at the atomic level, planet cracker missiles that can shatter worlds, and something we call the Phoenix Protocol. What is the Phoenix Protocol? President Volkov asked. Ross looked uncomfortable. It's not just a weapon. It's a complete transformation of human society for total war. Every factory becomes a weapons plant. Every civilian becomes a potential soldier. Every ship becomes a warship. We essentially turn our entire species into a military force. Amanda looked around the table. Votes? Every hand rose immediately. No discussion was needed. Captain Emma Davis was sleeping in her quarters on Luna Base when the alert came through her communicator. She rolled out of bed and grabbed her uniform, wondering what emergency drill they were running now. But when she reached the briefing room, she saw her entire squadron waiting with serious expressions. Listen up, people, Commander Brooks said, as Emma took her seat. This is not a drill. Earth has been attacked. Our colony at New Harmony was destroyed with massive civilian casualties. Emma felt her blood turn cold. Her brother had been stationed at New Harmony as a mining engineer. We are now at war with an alien empire called the Zephyrians, Brooks continued. Your mission is to take your ships to the edge of their territory and gather intelligence. We need to know how they fight, what their weaknesses are, and how many ships they have. Emma raised her hand. Commander, what about the survivors? My brother was at New Harmony. Brooks checked his tablet. Lieutenant David Davis was listed among the casualties. I'm sorry, Emma. Emma closed her eyes and took a deep breath. When she opened them again, they were filled with cold determination. After the briefing, Emma made her way to the hidden levels of Luna Base that most people didn't know existed. The elevator dropped for what felt like forever before opening into a vast underground hangar. Ships unlike anything the public had ever seen filled the space from floor to ceiling. Beautiful, aren't they? Said a voice behind her. Emma turned to see Professor Carl Murphy, the xenobiology expert. He was a small man with thick glasses, but his eyes held a dangerous intelligence. These are our real warships, Murphy continued, patting the hull of a sleek black vessel. Not the patrol boats we show the galaxy. These babies have stealth systems that make us invisible to most sensors, weapons that can punch through any known armor, and engines that can outrun anything currently flying. Emma looked at the ship's weapon systems. They were clearly designed for one purpose: killing as efficiently as possible. Professor, how long have we been preparing for this? She asked. Murphy smiled grimly. Since the day we first detected alien signals, Captain, Earth's leaders knew this day would come eventually. We've been watching the galaxy for over a century, learning about every species, every technology, every weakness. We just hoped it would never be necessary. He pulled up a holographic display showing the Zephyrian Empire. These creatures rule through fear and overwhelming force. They've never faced serious resistance because most species surrender when they see the size of their fleets. And humans? Emma asked. Humans don't surrender, Murphy replied. Especially not when our children have been murdered. The next morning, President Hayes addressed the world from the White House. But this wasn't the same woman who had been leading Earth through peaceful times. This woman's eyes held the cold fury of an entire species. Citizens of Earth, she began. Yesterday, 50,000 of our people were murdered by aliens who call themselves the Zephyrian Empire. They attacked our colony without warning. They targeted our children and our wounded. They showed no mercy. She paused, letting her words sink in across the world. For too long, Earth has been seen as a peaceful world interested only in exploration and trade. That was a choice we made, not a weakness we suffered from. We chose peace because we knew what we were capable of in war. Behind her, displays showed the hidden military installations coming online across the solar system. The Zephyrian Empire has made a terrible mistake. They attacked the wrong species. Now they will learn why every predator that ever lived on Earth eventually learned to fear human beings. We are done being peaceful. We are done being underestimated. The transmission ended, but across Earth and its colonies, the message was clear. Humanity was going to war, and this time they were not holding back. In deep space, automated probes began transmitting a simple message in every known galactic language. This is Earth. We do not seek war, but war has found us. Any species that stands with our enemies will be considered our enemies. Any species that aids our enemies will share their fate. We gave you peace. You chose war. Remember that choice. The galaxy was about to learn that sleeping giants, once awakened, are the most dangerous things in the universe. Commander Steve Blake floated in the darkness of space, watching the Zephyrian patrol ship through his stealth suit's display. The alien vessel moved slowly through the asteroid field, its crystalline hull glowing faintly in the starlight. It had no idea that 5 human soldiers were already aboard. Team 2 is in position, Lieutenant Amy Foster whispered through the comm system. She was hidden in the engine room with Sergeant Tony Martinez, both of them waiting for Steve's signal. Team 3 ready, reported Chief Helen Brooks from the ship's data center. She was alone, but Steve knew she could handle herself. Helen had been breaking into alien computer systems since before the war started. Steve checked his weapon one more time. It was designed specifically for fighting Zephyrians, based on data they had gathered from the New Harmony attack. The energy pulse would disrupt their biomechanical bodies without damaging the ship's systems. Remember, we need prisoners, Steve reminded his team. Command wants to know how their military is organized and what other colonies they plan to attack. The Zephyrian ship had a crew of 30. Steve's team had been watching them for 6 hours, learning their routines and identifying the important officers. The aliens had no security protocols for boarding parties because they had never needed them. No species had ever been crazy enough to board Zephyrian ships during combat. Beginning operation, Steve whispered. The attack was swift and silent. Steve's team moved through the ship like ghosts, stunning crew members before they could sound an alarm. The Zephyrians were individually powerful, but they had never learned to fight in the cramped corridors of their own ships. Within 10 minutes, the entire crew was unconscious. Ship secured, Steve reported to Captain Paul Anderson, who was waiting in their stealth vessel nearby. Beginning interrogation. The Zephyrian captain was the first to wake up. Steve had learned enough of their language to communicate, though he preferred to let Helen handle the talking. She had a gift for making aliens very uncomfortable. "Where is your fleet going next?" Helen asked the captain in perfect Zephyrian. The alien's energy form flickered with what Steve had learned was anger. "I will tell you nothing, human animal." Helen smiled coldly. "Oh, I think you will." She activated a device that Steve didn't recognize, The Zephyrian captain began to convulse as energy patterns disrupted his biomechanical form. It was clearly causing him intense pain. "Your species experiences agony differently than ours," Helen explained calmly. "We've spent the last month studying the bodies from New Harmony. We know exactly which frequencies cause the most suffering." Steve felt slightly sick watching, but he remembered the videos from New Harmony. The alien civilians his people had murdered, the children who had died screaming. "The next target is the mining world of Kepler 438, the captain gasped. "Admiral Krickstall wants to destroy another colony to send a message to your species." "How many ships?" Helen continued. 50 attack vessels. The same fleet that destroyed your pathetic colony." Helen looked at Steve and nodded. They had what they needed. 2 days later, Steve's team hit their third Zephyrian ship. This time, they didn't just interrogate the crew. They left them alive, but arranged the bodies in the cargo bay in a very specific pattern. When the ship was found by other Zephyrians, they would understand that humans had been studying their anatomy very carefully. "Command, this is Shadow Squadron," Steve reported from the bridge of another captured vessel. "We have confirmed intelligence on 17 Zephyrian fleet positions and identified their primary supply routes." "Excellent work, Commander," came General Webb's voice through the encrypted channel. "Are you ready for Phase 2? Steve looked around at his team. Amy was downloading data from the ship's computers, while Tony was setting charges throughout the vessel. Helen was preparing another message for the Zephyrians to find. "We're ready, sir." Phase 2 was different. Instead of capturing ships, they began destroying them, but not quickly. Steve's teams would board a vessel, disable its engines and weapons, then systematically hunt down the crew over several hours. They wanted the Zephyrians to have time to send distress calls. The aliens began to panic. Their military had never faced an enemy that fought like this. Zephyrian fleets were designed for massive battles between large ships, not for dealing with small teams of boarders who seemed to appear from nowhere. "Shadow Squadron, we're intercepting Zephyrian communications," Captain Anderson reported from his command ship. "They're calling human soldiers the Silent Death and warning their fleets to travel in larger groups." Steve smiled grimly. Fear was a weapon, and humans knew how to use it better than any species in the galaxy. On the 4th week of operations, Steve's team infiltrated a Zephyrian research station orbiting a dead planet. The facility was massive, with hundreds of alien scientists working on various projects. Helen's job was to access their central computer, while Steve's team kept the scientists busy. What they found in the computers changed everything. "Steve, you need to see this," Helen called from the data center. Her voice was tight with anger. The files showed detailed plans for the conquest of human space. New Harmony had been just the beginning. The Zephyrians planned to attack every human colony one by one until Earth surrendered. They had detailed maps of human settlements, population counts, and even psychological profiles of human leaders. "They've been watching us for years," Helen said, scrolling through the data. "This wasn't a random attack. They planned to wipe us out slowly, making each colony watch the others die." But there was more. The files contained information about other species the Zephyrians had conquered. Worlds where entire civilizations had been enslaved or exterminated. The aliens weren't just conquerors. They were genocidal maniacs who enjoyed causing suffering. "Download everything," Steve ordered. "Earth needs to see this." As Helen worked, Steve explored the rest of the station. In one laboratory, he found something that made his blood boil. Zephyrian scientists were experimenting on captured humans from New Harmony. Men, women, and children who had survived the initial attack were being tortured in the name of research. Steve found 12 survivors still alive. They were barely conscious, but they recognized him as human. One of them was a little girl who couldn't have been more than 8 years old. "We're going to get you out of here," Steve promised her. But first, he had work to do. When the Zephyrian rescue ships arrived at the research station 3 days later, they found a scene that would haunt their species for generations. Every scientist had been killed, but not quickly. The humans had taken their time, using the same instruments the aliens had used on human prisoners. In the center of the main laboratory, a message was written in Zephyrian text using the scientist's own biomechanical fluid. You studied us. Now we study you. We are learning. The rescued human prisoners were already on their way back to Earth along with terabytes of stolen Zephyrian data. But the message Steve left behind was spreading through the alien empire faster than any ship could travel. Admiral Krickstall read the reports in his flagship with growing unease. Human raiders were hitting Zephyrian ships across 12 star systems. His fleets were starting to refuse patrol missions, claiming that humans appeared out of nowhere like demons from space. They don't fight like any species we've encountered, his tactical officer reported. They study our weaknesses, adapt to our strategies, and seem to learn from every encounter. Each attack is more effective than the last. Krickstall studied the tactical display showing human raid locations. There was a pattern there, but he couldn't figure out what it meant. Double all patrols, he ordered, and send a message to the High Command. We may have underestimated this species. But in the depths of space, Steve Blake and hundreds of other human teams continued their deadly work. They had learned the most important lesson of warfare. Sometimes the hunter becomes the hunted, and humans, it turned out, were very good at being predators. Admiral Krickstall stood on the bridge of his flagship, watching the massive Zephyrian fleet assemble around him. 200 of the Empire's most powerful warships floated in perfect formation, their crystalline hulls gleaming like deadly jewels against the stars. This was the largest military force the Zephyrians had ever gathered in one place. Admiral, the Star Renderer is ready for deployment, his weapons officer reported. The Star Renderer was their ultimate weapon, capable of destabilizing a sun and destroying entire solar systems. It had never been used in actual combat, but the time for restraint was over. Good, Krickstall replied, his energy form crackling with anger. These humans think they are clever with their sneak attacks and their terror tactics. We will show them what real power looks like. The human raids had become unbearable. In the past month, Zephyrian ships had started disappearing entirely. Whole patrol fleets would simply vanish, leaving only debris fields and horrifying messages, written in Zephyrian blood. His own officers were starting to refuse missions, claiming that humans could appear anywhere at any time. Set course for the human home system, Krickstall ordered. We will end this war by destroying their homeworld. But when the Zephyrian fleet dropped out of hyperspace at the edge of Earth's solar system, they found something no one had expected. The human home system had been transformed into a fortress. Admiral Grace Sullivan stood in the command center of her flagship, watching the alien fleet appear on her screens. She was a small woman with gray hair and kind eyes, but her voice carried the authority of someone who had spent 40 years preparing for this moment. All stations, this is Admiral Sullivan, she broadcast to the human fleet. The enemy has arrived. Remember New Harmony. Remember our children. Show them what happens when you attack Earth. The Zephyrians had expected to find a few orbital defense platforms and maybe some patrol ships. Instead, they discovered that humans had weaponized their entire solar system. Asteroids had been converted into massive gun platforms. The moons of Jupiter and Saturn bristled with missile launchers. Even the gas giants themselves had been turned into weapon systems, their atmospheres converted into energy collectors that could power planet-killing weapons. How is this possible? Krickstall demanded, staring at the tactical display. Our intelligence said the humans had only basic defenses. His tactical officer was frantically scanning the system. Admiral, I'm reading over 3,000 weapon platforms, and their energy signatures. They're using technologies we don't recognize. Dr. Nina Walsh worked at her station aboard the human command ship, making final adjustments to the quantum disruptors. She was young for a weapons specialist, but her brilliance had made her one of Earth's most important military assets. Admiral, all quantum weapons are online, she reported to Sullivan. The Zephyrians' biomechanical forms are particularly vulnerable to quantum disruption. Their own energy patterns will turn against them. Sullivan nodded. Begin the demonstration. A single human ship, no larger than a Zephyrian scout vessel, moved toward the alien fleet. The Zephyrians opened fire with everything they had, but their weapons passed harmlessly through the human ship as if it wasn't there. Phase technology, Dr. Walsh explained to the captured Zephyrian officers who were watching from the brig. "We learned it from studying your own attacks. You see, every time you destroyed one of our ships, we analyzed the wreckage. Every time you killed our people, we studied how you did it. We've spent months learning from your victories." The human ship suddenly became solid again, appearing directly inside the Zephyrian formation. It fired once, and 3 alien vessels simply ceased to exist. Not destroyed, they just stopped being there, as if they had never existed at all. "Quantum disintegration," Walsh continued. "Your biomechanical forms exist in multiple dimensions simultaneously. We just convinced those dimensions to stop talking to each other." Captain Danny Lee piloted his fighter through the chaos of the EO battle, his ship moving faster than Zephyrian sensors could track. Human fighters didn't just outrun the aliens, they seemed to exist in several places at once, making it impossible to target them effectively. "This is Eagle Squadron," Danny reported over the comm. "Their weapon systems can't track us. It's like shooting fish in a barrel." The Zephyrian fleet was being torn apart, but Krixtal still had one card to play. "Deploy the Star Renderer," he ordered desperately. "Target their sun." The Star Renderer was a massive weapon that took several minutes to charge. As it powered up, human ships began converging on it from all directions. But Krixtal smiled coldly. Nothing could stop the weapon once it began firing. The Star Renderer fired, sending a beam of pure destruction toward Earth's sun. For a moment, it looked like the Zephyrians would win after all. Then the beam simply stopped. It hit some kind of invisible barrier surrounding the sun and dissipated harmlessly. "Solar shielding," Admiral Sullivan announced calmly. "We've been building it for 50 years. Did you really think we would leave our home star undefended?" Colonel Ray Thompson led the boarding parties that began taking Zephyrian ships intact. His Marines moved through alien vessels like they owned them, using weapons specifically designed to exploit every weakness in Zephyrian biomechanics. "Secure the bridge," Thompson ordered as his team swept through Krixtal's flagship. "We want their admiral alive." The Zephyrian crew fought desperately, but human weapons disrupted their energy forms, leaving them helpless. Within an hour, the flagship was under human control. Engineer Sam Rodriguez worked frantically in the captured ship's engine room, studying Zephyrian technology with the enthusiasm of a child with a new toy. "Admiral, you need to see this," he called excitedly over the comm. Sullivan arrived to find Rodriguez holding up a piece of alien hardware. "Their entire fleet is controlled by quantum entanglement communicators," he explained. "If we can hack into one, we can access all of them." Dr. Walsh joined them, her eyes lighting up as she understood the implications. "We could turn their own ships against them, make their fleet fight itself." "Do it," Sullivan ordered. Across the Zephyrian fleet, ships began turning their weapons on each other. Alien crews watched in horror as their own vessels became their enemies. The few ships that tried to retreat found their hyperspace engines had been remotely disabled. Admiral Krixtal was brought to the human command ship in restraints that disrupted his energy form. He looked around the bridge with a mixture of fear and confusion. "How?" he asked Sullivan. "How did a primitive species develop such advanced weapons?" Sullivan studied the alien commander with cold eyes. "Primitive? We've been studying warfare for thousands of years while you were conquering. Helpless worlds. We've fought each other in wars that would terrify your species. We know every trick, every strategy, every way to kill that has ever been invented." She gestured to the tactical display showing the destroyed Zephyrian fleet. "You made one critical mistake, Admiral. You assumed we were like the other species you've conquered. You thought we would surrender when faced with superior numbers." Krixtal's energy form flickered weakly. "Your species is insane. You fight wars you cannot win." "No," Sullivan replied. "We fight wars we refuse to lose. There's a difference." Dr. Walsh approached with a datapad. "Admiral, we've extracted their fleet movements from the quantum communicators. We know the location of every Zephyrian military asset in the galaxy." Sullivan turned back to Krixtal. "You wanted to see what humans do when we're threatened. Congratulations, Admiral. You're about to find out." She activated the ship's communication system, sending a message that would reach every corner of the galaxy. This is Earth. The Zephyrian Empire attacked our civilians without warning. They murdered our children. They tortured our people in the name of science. Today, their fleet has been destroyed. Tomorrow, we come for their homeworlds. The transmission ended, but its message was clear. The galaxy was about to witness something it had never seen before. A human war machine at full power. In the depths of space, human fleets were already moving toward Zephyrian territory. Ships that had been hidden for decades emerged from secret bases. Weapons that violated every galactic treaty were being loaded onto vessels designed for one purpose: total war. The Zephyrian Empire had awakened something terrible, and now they would face the consequences of their actions. Fleet Admiral Jack Harrison stood in the war room deep beneath Colorado Mountain, surrounded by displays showing human fleets moving across the galaxy. 3 months had passed since the destruction of the Zephyrian fleet at Earth, and now humanity was bringing the war to their enemy's doorstep. Admiral, Captain Miller's fleet has reached the outer edge of the Zephyrian home system, reported Colonel Frank Davis from his tactical station. They're requesting permission to begin the final assault. Jack studied the display showing the alien homeworld. It was a beautiful planet covered in crystal cities that gleamed like jewels. Billions of Zephyrians lived there, most of them civilians who had nothing to do with the attack on New Harmony. But Jack remembered the files they had found on the research station. The Zephyrians had planned to exterminate every human in the galaxy. "Tell Captain Miller she has permission to proceed," Jack ordered. "But remind her of the Phoenix Protocol rules. We're not here to commit genocide. We're here to end a war." The Phoenix Protocol had changed everything. In the 3 months since its activation, every human settlement had become a military base. Every factory now produced weapons. Every civilian had received basic military training. Humanity had transformed itself into the most efficient war machine the galaxy had ever seen. Dr. Peter Clark worked frantically at his computer station, monitoring the quantum networks that connected every human ship across the galaxy. The Phoenix Protocol wasn't just about weapons and soldiers. It was about turning the entire human species into a single, unified organism, focused on one goal: victory. "Admiral, all fleets are reporting ready," Clark announced. "Phase 1 of the final operation can begin at your command." Jack looked around the room at the faces of his officers. General Frank Davis, who had coordinated the ground invasion forces. Lieutenant Colonel Jane Wilson, who led the special operations teams. Dr. Clark, whose technology made their impossible coordination possible. These people had worked without sleep for months to reach this moment. "Begin Phase 1, Jack ordered. Across the galaxy, human fleets struck at Zephyrian military targets simultaneously. But this wasn't the random raiding of the early war. This was precision warfare on a scale never before seen. Every Zephyrian military base, every weapons factory, every training facility was hit at exactly the same moment. Captain Kate Miller watched from her command ship as human forces swept through the Zephyrian home system. Her fleet moved with perfect coordination, each ship knowing exactly where every other ship would be at any given moment. It was like watching a deadly dance performed by thousands of dancers who had practiced together for years. "Target the orbital defense platforms first," Kate ordered. "Leave the civilian stations alone." The Zephyrian defenses crumbled quickly. Their military had been built around the idea of overwhelming force against weaker enemies. They had never learned to fight against an opponent who matched their technology and exceeded their tactical skills. On the surface of the Zephyrian homeworld, General Frank Davis led the ground assault forces through the crystal cities. His soldiers moved with mechanical precision, capturing military installations while carefully avoiding civilian areas. "Remember, we're not conquerors," Frank reminded his troops over the comm system. "We're here to remove their ability to make war, not to rule their people." But the Zephyrians had one last desperate gambit. In a hidden bunker beneath their capital city, the remaining Zephyrian leaders activated their final weapon, a device that would destroy their own planet rather than let humans capture it. Lieutenant Colonel Jane Wilson's Special Operations Team detected the activation sequence just in time. "Admiral, The Zephyrians are trying to trigger a planetary self-destruct, she reported as her team fought through the bunker's defenses. How long do we have? Jack asked from Earth. Maybe 10 minutes, Jane replied, her team's weapons cutting through alien guards. I can stop it, but I need to reach the control center. The race through the bunker was desperate. Jane's team had trained for this exact scenario, but the Zephyrian defenses were fierce. Alien soldiers fought with the fury of beings who knew they were facing extinction. But humans had something the Zephyrians didn't understand: the ability to sacrifice themselves for others without hesitation. When the final blast door wouldn't open, Sergeant Mike Torres threw himself on an alien grenade to save his teammates. When the control computer required a manual shutdown that would trap the operator, Jane didn't hesitate to volunteer. Tell my family I died finishing what the Zephyrians started, she said as she began the shutdown sequence. But Dr. Clark had been monitoring the situation from Earth. Jane, hold position, he called through the comm. I'm sending a quantum pulse through the network. It should disable their self-destruct remotely. The pulse worked. Across the planet, Zephyrian weapon systems shut down as human technology took control of their networks. The war was over. Admiral Crixtal was brought before Jack Harrison in the same bunker where the Zephyrian leaders had tried to destroy their own world. The alien admiral looked broken, his energy form flickering weakly. Your species is more ruthless than we ever imagined, Crixtal said. You could have destroyed our world, but you chose not to. Why? Jack looked at the alien commander with tired eyes. Because we're not you. We don't murder civilians. We don't torture children. We don't commit genocide because it's convenient. He activated a holographic display showing the galaxy. Red markers indicated former Zephyrian military installations, all of them now under human control or destroyed. Green markers showed civilian areas that had been left untouched. Your military no longer exists, Jack continued. Your weapons, factories have been destroyed. Your warships are scrap metal. But your people are alive, and they will remain alive as long as they stay peaceful. Crixtal stared at the display in disbelief. You've conquered our entire empire in 3 months. How is that possible? Because you made us angry, Jack replied simply. And humans are very good at war when we're angry. Captain Miller stood on the bridge of her ship, watching as human engineers began dismantling the last Zephyrian weapons platform. In the distance, she could see civilian ships beginning to move freely through space again, no longer afraid of their own military. Captain, we're receiving a transmission from the Galactic Council, her communications officer reported. They want to discuss terms for ending the conflict. Kate smiled grimly. The Galactic Council had ignored humanity's requests for aid when the Zephyrians attacked. Now they wanted to negotiate. Tell them we don't negotiate, she replied. We dictate terms. The final transmission went out to every corner of the galaxy, broadcast on every frequency known to science. Jack Harrison's face appeared on screens, across 1,000 worlds. This is Earth, he began. The war with the Zephyrian Empire is over. Their military has been destroyed, but their people have been spared. This is how humans fight wars. We are precise. We are efficient. And we show mercy to those who surrender. He paused, letting his words sink in across the galaxy. To any species watching this transmission, understand this clearly. Earth tried peace. You chose war. We gave you the chance to leave us alone. Some of you refused. Remember New Harmony, and remember that we could have destroyed the Zephyrian homeworld but chose not to. That mercy will not be offered twice. The transmission ended, but its message echoed across the galaxy. Humanity had proven that they were not just capable of incredible violence, but capable of restraining that violence when victory was achieved. Years later, the galaxy had learned a new truth. Humans were the most dangerous species ever encountered, not because they were the strongest or the smartest, but because they fought wars with both unlimited fury and unlimited precision. They could destroy worlds, but they chose not to. They could commit genocide, but they refused to. And perhaps, most terrifying of all, they remembered everything. Every species that had stood against them, every ally who had abandoned them, every enemy who had shown mercy or cruelty. Humans kept track of it all. In the rebuilt colony of New Harmony, a memorial stood to the 50,000 people who had died in the first Zephyrian attack. Captain Jake Morrison's final words were carved in stone at its base. "Tell Earth what happened here." Earth had listened, Earth had remembered, and Earth had responded with the full fury of a species that protected its own above all else. The galaxy would never forget the lesson. You can attack humans, but you better make sure you destroy them completely. Because if even one survives, they will find you, they will hunt you, and they will make you pay for every life you took. Humanity had tried peace. The galaxy chose war. Now everyone knew the difference between the two.